Hiya, my name is Poke King, but you can just call me King, and today I'm doing something a little bit different, a little artsy, and hopefully something that everybody will enjoy. I've been wanting to make a lot more art or drawing content on my channel, and I've actually been meaning to draw some eeveelutions for some time, so I thought, why not combine the two, make a video out of it? Maybe it'll be interesting, maybe it'll be fun, and yeah, just get some of the concepts that I've kind of thought about for eeveelutions down on paper. It was just an idea that I had one night when I couldn't sleep, so I thought that maybe it would be interesting to make a whole video about it. So that's what we're gonna do today. I've actually come up with 4 different eeveelution designs of 4 different types that we have not seen an eeveelution in. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of show everybody my drawing process, explain some of my ideas for my concepts of these Pokemon. Let's just jump right into it. The first eeveelution that I am drawing here is actually a ghost type Eevee that is a concept that I came up with probably when I was like 11 or 12, and this design that I'm doing here is a redesign of that original concept. So the eeveelution's name is Gasleon, and Gasleon takes a lot of inspiration from Ghastly, hence its name, because I really enjoyed how Ghastly kind of looked and the smoke effect that's around Ghastly, and I wanted to incorporate that in this eeveelution as well. Because Gasleon took so much inspiration from Ghastly, I also wanted to give it a pretty interesting way of how you would evolve Eevee into this Pokemon. And my idea is that you would have to have a Ghastly in your party as you leveled up the Eevee, and then it would evolve into Gasleon if you did that. To my knowledge, I don't think that there is any Pokemon that you have to have another Pokemon in your party in order to evolve it. So I think that that would be a really cool concept. And to further cement the Ghastly inspiration, the tail of this Pokemon is the same type of gas that the Ghastly has in its design. Another piece of lore that I created for this Pokemon is that it has bangs that cover its eyes, and the reason for that is because if someone were to lift up the hair and actually look into Gasleon's eyes, it would suck your soul. So you would be dead if you did that. It's something that's very reminiscent of Mimikyu in a way, where if you lift up the cloth, in the Pokedex entry, it says the person who lifted up the cloth of Mimikyu died of a heart attack because it was so afraid. So it's a very similar concept in the way that if you look, you will end up passing away. And I thought that that was very interesting for a ghost type eeveelution as well, to kind of give it some more creepy lore, similar to a lot of the other ghost type Pokemon. Another thing that I added to its design is stitches that are across its body that is very reminiscent of Frankenstein, where it looks like parts of its body were kind of sewn together. I thought that that really fit this aesthetic and made it a little bit more creepy and diverse in the actual design. It's a little bit more interesting to look at. When I originally designed this Pokemon, it did not have these stitches, so I decided to add it to kind of emphasize that ghost zombie type of aesthetic. When thinking about the actual abilities and moves and stuff like that of Gasleon, I envision it having the ability Cursed Body, and I think that the aesthetic and how it looks kind of plays well into that too. As for moves or special moves, it definitely would have things like Shadow Ball, Phantom Force, and all of those types of ghost moves. But I would kind of want to give it another move that I don't really have a name for, but just something that I was thinking about was if it had a move where if you like attack it, it can kind of rebuild itself or something like that, because of the stitches and how it looks like it's kind of built together with different parts and everything like that. I think it would be really interesting if it had some type of move where if you attack it, it's able to build itself back together and heal. In this part of the video, you can actually see that I'm struggling a lot with trying to color the tail and give it that same effect as the Ghastly. I tried a bunch of different brushes before I decided to just go in there with an airbrush and kind of fill out some areas with darker colors and lighter colors. And then you'll also notice that I do a blur effect about 1 billion times to try to really get it that same type of texture as the Ghastly. I will say that it looks really good. I don't think that it looks exactly like the Ghastly gas at all, but I really did try my best to try to give it that same effect. Now, when it comes to the shading of the actual piece and the shading of my other eeveelutions as well, I watched a lot of videos on how to actually shade in the Sugimori style, and I am not the best at it at all. I really tried to mimic the watercolor before, but it honestly wasn't working, so I tried a different way where I was just kind of going in with a darker brush and doing an outline, and then going in with an even darker brush and coloring in the actual shadow area. I think it looks really good, but I'm not sure if it matches the style exactly. I really want to work on the Sugimori style because I really like it, and I'd love to make more videos like this where I'm designing Pokemon. And I think once I get more practice with the style, things will look a lot better. Now, you'll also notice here that I'm trying to actually make it look like there's some red light peering through the bangs as well. It doesn't really look like that. I tried to make it look like it was something where like the eyes of the Pokemon are glowing red to kind of give it more of that mysterious, idea of lifting up the bangs, but then it's like, oh, you might die. I don't know. I really did try to give it some interesting lighting and everything like that, but it looks a bit strange. When it comes to the actual body as well, I did try to keep everything very purple and gray, and I tried to obviously differentiate the different parts of the body as well where the stitches are. I think it looked really cool in the end, and I really enjoy the color scheme of this Pokemon. And there it is, the finished Gastlion. Now, the second Pokemon that I designed for this video is a Dragon-type Eeveelution that I have named Cerbreon. So, the reason why I named it Cerbreon, and it kind of has to do with a lot of what inspired me to actually design this Pokemon in the first place, is I decided instead of just doing a dragon Eevee and giving it like wings and scales and everything like that, I went in a completely different direction. So my first thought when creating this evolution, I really wanted to do a Hydra and give it multiple different heads. But when I was thinking about a Hydra, another idea came into my mind, and then it just turned into a Cerberus evolution. So what I decided to go with is a lot of inspiration from Cerberus. So I gave it 3 heads, I gave it some very pointy ears, and the devil tail as well, which is how Cerberus is often depicted. And I'm thinking because this Pokemon does have 3 heads as well, I would give it a special move that would be something along the lines of try headbutt. So it would basically hit the opponent 3 times with each of the different heads that it has. Another interesting thing that I wanted to do with this Pokemon too is I wanted to give each of the different heads a different personality. So I tried to kind of convey that in the drawing here, but really what it is that the middle one is kind of more of the leader and more serious and makes a lot of the calls of the Pokemon as a whole, whereas the one on the left is more cutesy but is also sinister, and then the one on the right is very mischievous. So I'm trying to give them all 3 different personalities. It would be very interesting to see that in a Pokemon. One of the other things that I did in this drawing is I wanted to still make it look very dragon-esque, but I didn't want it to just be a copy of something like Dragonite or Garchomp or any other dragon type that's out there and just give it wings and a tail and call it a day. So there was a couple of things that I did to try to make it identifiable as a dragon type. I gave it a lot of spikes on the sides of its arms and legs, and also really wanted to do a lot of points and kind of rough edges with this design to give it that more edgy dragon type feel. I think keeping the ears pointy was a good idea, especially because a lot of the art of Cerberus has it depicted with pointy ears, but then also I think that it helps with the dragon aspect as well. And then the eyes, I wanted to do a little bit of slit type of eyes to make it look more like a dragon type as well. Around the neck was actually pretty interesting because I decided to do these spikes around it, and that's just because I wanted to give it the same collar that Cerberus had, because Cerberus has 3 spike collars on each of its heads. But I didn't want to give it collars outright, because I think it's really weird when Pokemon are wearing things like jewelry or clothes or something like that. So I wanted to kind of make it a part of its actual skin. So I kind of made the fur around them a little bit darker, which you'll see when I actually color it. And then that kind of helped it stand out without me giving it a whole actual collar. I also wanted to make sure to give it very sharp claws because I wanted it to look very edgy and dragon-esque. When I'm thinking about how an Eevee would evolve into Cerebrion, the one thing that I kind of thought about was you could take it to the distortion world and evolve it. I thought that that would be very novel and very interesting and kind of match up with the lore of Cerberus and everything, and the distortion world being kind of like the Pokemon version of the underworld. But I don't know how practical that would be because I don't think that it would really make any sense for you to take an Eevee into the distortion world, and that's the only way you can get this Pokemon. So the other thing that I was thinking, besides evolving it in the distortion world, is maybe giving it like a dragon claw and then having it level up holding a dragon claw, and that's how it would evolve into this. Another idea that I kind of thought about for many of these evolutions, because terastallizing is something that we have now, what I thought was some of these could actually be evolved into each of these types if the Terra type matched up with the type. So for example, your Eevee could evolve into Cerebrion if it was a dragon Terra type. So that's another possibility for not only this evolution but all of the other ones, and I wonder if that's something that if they actually do create any more evolutions in the future, they'll implement Terra typing into it. I think that that would be really interesting. For a moveset for this Pokemon, I'm definitely thinking that it would have a lot of dragon moves, so just like Dragon Breath and stuff like that, Dragon Claw. But another thing that I think would be interesting is if it could learn Flamethrower because of its inspiration to Cerberus, and Cerberus kind of being, you know, all about fire and everything like that. I think it would be really cool if this Pokemon could learn some fire type moves as well. For the color scheme of Cerebrion, I also wanted to do some reds and oranges and grays because if you look at reference pictures of Cerberus, Cerberus is kind of depicted as like a gray bulldog looking creature, and then the orange and red is obviously reminiscent of the fire. So that's what I wanted to do here. I actually really enjoy the color scheme that I picked for this Pokemon. And then you can see, as I mentioned before, with the spikes around the neck, it does look like collars, but I didn't give it any hard outline or anything like that, so it's not actually collars it has, it's just kind of a fur pattern. For the eyes, I also wanted to give the head in the middle red eyes where the other two had orange, just to kind of differentiate them as well. I also had an idea of giving each of the heads on the side one red eye and one orange eye, but I kind of decided against it because it looked very cluttered. As for abilities for this Pokemon, I definitely think that it should have some type of ability where fire type moves doesn't work on it, and maybe even heals the Pokemon. I think that that would be a really interesting idea, and it would also go again with the Cerberus lore. If I could have one kind of nitpick with this design, I definitely think that adding some more type of scales or something to it might have made it stand out more as a dragon type. Right now it kind of does look like a fire type, so I think adding some scales or some textures to it might have helped a little bit with just solidifying the dragon typing of it. But I do actually really like how the design looks. This design also took me the longest to shade and color because of the 3 different heads that it had, and also just the texture on the tail I was struggling with hard. So it was definitely an idea that kind of worked out a little bit better in my head than it did when I actually tried to apply it to paper, but I think it looked really, really good. And here is finished Cerebrion. So the next eeveelution that I did was actually a very fun one to come up with and conceptualize, and that is a bug type eeveelution. Now when I look up other fan drawings of a bug type eeveelution, I see a lot of butterfly ones, but I actually didn't see any moth ones. So what I decided to go with is I went with an eeveelution that would be inspired by Mothra, which was actually a lot more interesting and a lot more fun to kind of create and design than I originally thought it would be. So this here is Mothrion, and Mothrion is, like I said, based off of Mothra. So when I think about the types of moves and things that it could have, there's really a wide variety of things that it can do. I did research Mothra a little bit while I was creating and designing this Pokemon, and there were some ideas that I was really interested in for things like moves, as Mothra can shoot lasers and also sometimes shoot lightning out of her wings, which I thought was really cool. So I'm thinking of things like a laser beam attack for this Pokemon, and even thunder or thunderbolt could be an option for it as well, which I think would be really cool for a bug type Pokemon to have. For the wings, you can actually see I pulled up a reference picture of Mothra to try to get some of the basic shapes and designs for the wings the same on my Mothrion here. And then the ears I actually decided to design as the antennas of the moth. And I gave it a lot of fluff kind of around the neck and then matched that up with the tail because moths and Mothra does have that kind of fluffiness around its face. I tried to kind of make the legs and I guess arms of this Pokemon look as if it's floating and kind of just dangling there. I don't know how effective it was. I will say that I am not a very good creature or monster or animal artist, so this entire challenge was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I definitely think that I was able to get the ideas down and it looks pretty good. When I think about abilities for this Pokemon, one of the things that Mothra can do is she's actually immortal, and what happens is when I was researching it, she basically lays an egg as soon as she is reborn, so that if she dies, she's able to be reborn again. So what I'm thinking for Mothrion is that if it gets knocked out in like a single blow, so if a move just hits it and is completely knocked out from that, it's able to regain health as some type of like rebirth ability or something like that. Another thing Mothra is very known for is her very blue eyes, so I wanted to also convey that in the drawing as well. And then all of the colors for the color palette are very moth-like, so they are a lot of beiges, a lot of warm colors like oranges and yellows, and it just looks very earthy, and I really enjoyed the color palette for this Pokemon. When I think about how Eevee could evolve into Mothrion, there isn't really anything that comes to mind. I will say that I was really stuck with how it would evolve into this Pokemon, and the only thing that I can really think about is if it evolved with some type of evolution stone, but I know that there isn't really one for bugs. The one thing that I kind of came up with is there is an item called the Miracle Seed, and I was thinking that maybe it could hold that item and then evolve into Mothrion that way, or of course bringing into the idea of the Terra typing as well. So if you have an Eevee that is a bug Terra type, it could evolve into Mothrion from there. And here is the finished Mothrion design. For the last design here, it's actually a flying type Eevee, and this one has honestly quite a bit of explaining, and you'll, as the sketch kind of plays out, I think you might be a little bit confused as to what's going on and what exactly I'm designing here, but I'll explain it in a little bit here. The flying type evolution is called Mythion, and what I wanted to do for this when I was kind of thinking of ideas, my first thought was maybe I will make the ears wings, but I thought that that was a little strange and I wasn't a huge fan of it. So I was actually talking to my boyfriend at the time, and he gave me the idea of making it a Pegasus, which I thought was a pretty interesting idea, and I've had some experience drawing, well, My Little Ponies in the past, so I kind of already had an idea of what it would look like if I were to make an Eeveelution a Pegasus, so I was intrigued by the idea, and I decided to get to work with it. Now, the actual concept that I drew for Mythion looked really bad, and I will post it here in the video. And I was not a fan at all about what I came up with, and when I went to go and draw this, I was really hoping that I was able to change it around and just make it look better. So I changed a lot of things with the original concept, and one of those being the ears and also the hair or the mane of the Eeveelution, and I think that those changes were definitely good. I did want to kind of stay away from making it look like Galarian Rapidash because that is already a unicorn Pokemon. So I wanted to kind of give it different type of wings and a different type of unicorn horn and a different type of hairstyle to kind of differentiate it from it. And then another thing is the ears itself. Because it is an evolution, I wanted to make sure that it still maintained those really big Eevee ears, and that's exactly what I did here. The eyes, I think I actually made a little bit too big, but it kind of makes it look very cute, and I'm actually not that upset with how big the eyes are, and it ended up turning out really nice anyways. When I think about how Eevee would evolve into Mythion, the first thing that kind of came to my mind is it would hold the item that I'm forgetting the name of. It's like a balloon. I really wish that I remembered what the item was, but there is an item that's like a balloon that basically helps lower the weight of the Pokemon that's holding it. So that's what I'm thinking for this evolution, is it would hold that. But another idea would be if it used something along the lines of the Moonstone to evolve, because it is supposed to be like a mythical type of creature, and I think that if it used the Moonstone to evolve, it kind of would play into that as well. For abilities, Levitate is definitely one that I think would be great for this Pokemon, just because that's kind of the allure of flying type Pokemon, is having the ability Levitate. But it could also have other abilities. If I'm thinking of creating one myself, is maybe give it some type of wishing ability, where if it's in a jam or if the HP is too low, it could make a wish and then it would give you things like maybe an extra attack, or you can get some health back, or just things like that. I think that that would be really interesting if it's kind of like a random number generator as to what type of help you get, but you do get some type of help. For the color scheme of this, I really wanted to do a lot of pinks, and I actually kept my color wheel on the same shade of pink and then just kind of went lighter and darker from there. So I think that that was a really good idea because a lot of the colors look very unified, and I just loved how it turned out with the pinks and almost dark magentas and everything like that. For this being my least favorite sketch out of the three, I actually loved how it turned out, and it might be my favorite one of the bunch that I ended up doing for this video. I just really liked the concept. I really liked the colors. I love the changes that I made to the mane and just the overall composition of the drawing. So it ended up being something really, really nice. When I think about moves this Pokemon can have, definitely want a lot of like the wishing moves and like metronome and stuff like that. Very reminiscent of Clefairy's moves. I think that that would be really good. And then obviously give it a lot of flying moves like Aerial Ace, because it does have a unicorn horn that it could attack a Pokemon with as well. Another thing that I wanted to point out with this design in particular is the paws. I kind of wanted to make it look like hoofs, but it's just a different color of fur. So I made sure to keep the little toe beans in there in the design, and then just change the color of the fur on there to make it look like hooves. Another thing that I added to this was I did put some sparkles and some glitter on the hair and the tail, just to give it that extra bit of dimension and detail, and I think that it turned out really well. And here is the finished Mythion. So yeah, those are my 4 eeveelution types that I've decided to draw for this video. Let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. Like I said, personally, I think that Mythion might be my favorite just because of how well it turned out and how kind of upset I was with the concept sketch, so I'm just happy that it looks really well. So I think that that one might be my favorite, but definitely let me know which one you like in the comments. And if you liked this type of video, also let me know as well, because I'd love to make a lot more art videos, and they don't necessarily have to be eeveelution style videos, but I'd love to just make more art videos for the channel for sure. So if you liked this type of video, this type of concept, definitely let me know in the comments as well. Make sure to leave a like, hit subscribe, and that notification bell. Do all those silly little things to help support my channel, as I really appreciate it. And I do post videos every Tuesday. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!